Coach Craig, and I'm here with none other than Nick Walker, Arnold Classic champion. He's going to the Olympia.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm excited for this one.
And it took about 20 minutes to get things going. We had ear problems, mic problems, and it's like technology. I don't know how to do anything. Luckily, we have people here. But let's get right into it. The first thing I want to talk about, it's a lot to do with like training. Like, how is it that you're training right now? Because you have so much muscle. You're like, what, 290 something?
292.
292 and 5'7", 5'8", somewhere around there. Yeah, that is a ton of muscle. So like, how are you training that allows you to have that much size? Because obviously you're doing something right. And I just want to hear how you train.
Honestly, for the past probably couple of years, I started doing more of like the low volume, high intensity type training. And I think that has packed on the most size on me as possible. Because even prior to that, I used to train very high volume. And I think I got great results that way. But I think that to a degree, I was probably somewhat overtraining and not giving my body enough time to recover. So even though I got good results, I think I wasn't getting the size and strength to go along with it. So once I kind of backed down the volume and was able to get stronger a lot faster. And I don't train like 2 to 3 reps. I stay in like 8 to 12, no less. And I just think that allowed me to get stronger quicker, recover a lot better. And I never have any type of struggles during training. So
okay. And so basically what I'm hearing is earlier in your years, you used a lot of volume, so a lot of sets, and kind of like Jay Cutler. I interviewed Jay Cutler and he was big on volume, less rest between sets, doing like 30 sets for a workout and like crazy amounts of volume. But lately you've switched over to doing less sets, but going really hard on those sets and like really getting the most out of it. More so like, I guess like Dorian Yates, for example. Could you elaborate? Like, do you do drop sets, super sets? Like, how do you increase?
Yeah, I still incorporate all that. Like, it's definitely more volume than Dorian Yates, but just a lot less volume. So like a typical, like, so yesterday I did chest. I would do like two working sets of a cable fly. Like they were working, but none of them were like it's a true failure. And then I went to like my bread and butter movement, which was the incline dumbbell press, which I worked up to 187, which is like, I don't know how much that in kilos, because at my 40.
Almost 90, but 85 kilos, 187.
Yeah, so I got 10 reps from that. And then I just did a back off set of like 160s and got 12. And then we moved over to the incline hammer strength press, where I did one top set, but I did a rest pause set there. And then we moved over to flat Smith press, and I worked up to one top set into a double drop. And then we ended with pec deck, where we just did 3 straight sets of like 12 to 15, and that was it.
Okay, so how many total hard, like when I mean hard, like how many sets failure are you doing for a body part, like chest in one?
So for chest failure, I mean, if you want to include like the drop sets and the rest pause, I'd say 1, 2, probably around 8.
Okay, so that kind of comes in line with like, and you do that about twice a week, would you say?
Well, I do like a 2-day on, 1 day off split, so I'm hitting everything. Like even on my shoulder and tricep day, I hit a chest a little bit just to pump it up. But I'd say I hit everything like 7 to 8 days apart.
Okay, so you're only training chest every 7 to 8 days.
Yeah, like I said, I hit it a little bit on like my other, like my shoulder day, just to keep blood flow in there, but like its own main day, a good 7 to 8 days spread out.
Okay, so that is a lot different than how I would be training, where I'm training right now I'm doing my whole body 3 times a week, but typically I was doing my entire body twice a week. So what you're doing is training extremely hard. I mean, you're using rest, pause, and drop sets, double drops, and so on, going super hard. And then the other workout, you're kind of doing like an easy workout for chest, just getting a pump, bringing some nutrients to the muscle. And then you do that about every 8 days.
Pretty much.
Okay, awesome. It's good to see differences in training. And this
is new for me. Now that I'm with my new trainer, he has it set up this way. So I've never really trained this way. I'm used to like having a set schedule. Like I never done really like a 2-day on, 1 day off split. I usually have like set days. So this is new for me, but I've noticed a lot of progression like this, and I do like it.
And so is it possibly that you kind of hit a sticking point, like you're gaining so much size after a while on a certain training program, high volume, for example, then you switch over to high intensity. Maybe you're training your chest twice a week, then you try it once a week. You keep mixing it up. Is that part of your training? Like, is that how you're able to keep gaining size year after year?
Yeah, I think that plays a part. I think training something so frequent so often, I think you do become stagnant. And then once you pull back, say you hit legs once a week instead of, 2 or 3, I think to a degree you're giving it rest and a lot more recovery, which in return it's going to grow more.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so would you do the same thing for all body parts? Like we've gone over chest, but what about like the legs and back? Is it different? Do you need higher reps for quads, lower reps for quads? Is there certain muscles that you train differently than others?
Well, yeah. So like I have the way like my legs are set up, like I have a quad dominant day with some hamstrings, and then like 4 or 5 days later, I have a hamstring dominant day with some quads at the end. But the reps, I always keep the reps a little higher on leg days, anywhere from like 12 to 20, really.
Okay. And do you notice that people in the gym, like I always notice people seem to, like the younger they are, they think they need to really lift heavy weights. Like they need to do sets of 5. Do you find that lifting like slightly lighter, but really concentrating on technique is important? Or is it just like, no, just go all out? Like what is the mind, like, what are you thinking about while you're lifting the weights?
I'm all about, having perfect form, perfect technique with as heavy weight as I possibly can to get the most out of the muscle. Like when I was younger, I used to be able to squat like 700 pounds on my back for like 6 to 8, but my legs didn't really grow that way. And then I realized just in general, squats weren't really my thing in terms of growth for my legs. So I would switch to the hack squat, where I could still go really heavy at 8 to 12, but contract my legs a lot harder and they grew a lot faster.
And what about the speed of movement? Because a lot of, like, I always say, like 10 reps for me, I'm 5'6", versus 10 reps, a guy 6'9", I just started coaching. What does that matter? Like, is it the reps or is it how long the set takes? Because you could go 4 seconds down and 2 seconds up on a squat. That's 6 seconds. 10 reps could take a minute, or you could just bang out real quick. It might take 15 seconds. So how long are your sets taking, and how is the speed of movement during your sets?
I'd say a typical top set, depending how many reps I do. I'm all about the negative. So like I go really slow down. I don't go slow up. I explode up, but I go a good probably 2 to 3 second negative. But they could be anywhere from a minute to a minute and a half.
Wow. So very long time under tension. I'm a firm believer in this. I think that people are lifting, because obviously 700 pounds, you can bang that out if you're doing, well, if you're really strong, you can, for 1 or 2 reps powered up. But imagine 400 pounds done really slowly with great control for 10 reps, way harder than just doing 700 pounds once.
Well, that's where I also think you don't really need a ton of volume if you're training that way. Because if you do it right, like say you do a leg press and it's a set of 20 and you're doing like 2 to 3 negative or second negatives, explode. Like if you're doing it properly and going a real failure, your legs are probably like toasted after that one set.
Absolutely.
You should be able to move on to the next exercise.
Now, when I was younger, I mean, I'm 46 years of age. So when I was younger, I was all about like, I'm going to lift really heavy, and my ego was there. I was squatting 365 as a teen for 12 reps, but I'm only going halfway down. It's like, if you go below parallel, such a huge difference. And so do you find that as you got older, you've been obviously at it for many years now, do you find that you have better form, stricter form, higher reps, better control, and that when you were younger, you really cared about the weights, but now that you've gotten older, perhaps you're smarter, trying to avoid injuries? Like, have you changed your methods of training from being a teenager to now?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's all about contracting the muscle to get it to grow. And when you're younger, you don't think that way. I'm going to train as heavy as I can, and it's going to look good. It's going to feel good. And it's an ego thing. But I also had to remember I'm a bodybuilder, not a power lifter, but so now the way I do lift, I'm able to actually lift those weights that I used to, but contract a lot better now. So
yeah. So the weights you could lift as a teenager, now that you're, I mean, maybe 100 pounds bigger, 50, whatever pounds muscle bigger, you're actually strong enough to handle those weights, but with proper technique. And I think it's important for the younger people to realize like the older people get, the bigger they are, and you watch them train, it's almost like the less they care about how much weight's on the bar and the more they care about their form. I mean, I used to bench press all the time. I would bounce the weight off my chest, trying to get the heaviest weight possible. As I got older, I'm like, I don't want to get hurt. And I would pause every time I did a rep.
Pausing, I think, is one of the greatest things for time under tension and to build muscle without going extremely heavy.
And so it sounds like you would have to agree that leave your ego at the door and lighten the weight, focus on the mind, and you're going to get much better results.
Strength will always come, but to develop the muscle, you have to have the perfect, I won't say perfect, but the proper technique, and the muscle has to be contracting at all times.
And to learn this, because I've said before, you can read as many books as possible. And I got my master's in kinesiology, and people are studying, how do you do this? And I'm like, yeah, but you guys don't even lift weights. You don't know what you're doing. Like, how did you become an expert on technique and form and lifting? Because it doesn't come from a book. Did you watch YouTube videos? Did you have a training partner, a coach? What got you to be able to use such good technique to this day?
A lot of it was just learned over time. I watched a bunch of videos. My old coach, Matt, at the time, he taught me a lot of different things. And I also would just apply to what I know works best for me and just kind of progress with all that.
And so I've watched, and in case you're wondering, Nick Walker, he has a YouTube channel, like 150,000 followers or so. And a lot of those videos are actually how to train properly. Like, you're demonstrating the exercise, you're doing your actual workouts, because some people sit in front of a camera sounding smart and say, you need to train this way and that way because I read this study. You're actually in the gym, lifting the weight, showing people exactly what you do in the real world. You're showing your diet and so on. And so I like that, because you're showing what really is happening. And so many people nowadays, it's all, a study said this. A study can say whatever you want it to say, but how are the actual top pros actually training? And so you're one of them. And so I highly recommend people go and check out your channel, because you're actually down to earth, showing people what you're really doing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, science is science, right? But we're all different. Like everything, like even when I explain my exercise, I make it clear, like, this is how I do it. It may not work for you, but try it, and it may work for you.
Yeah, because for example, you're training your chest every 8 days. And if you read the science is going to say you should be training your chest 2 or 3 days a week for a total of 10 to 20 sets for that, for that body part. But yet you're doing 8 super hard sets. But guess what? None of those studies use bodybuilders who are as strong as you or as big as you or have been training the way you have. And so how do they really know? Perhaps for 90% of the population, that is ideal. But it doesn't apply to everyone. And so if you're doing it in this way and it's working, then it's clearly working. And when you do when you read the research, it says, don't go to failure. Don't go so hard. Don't push yourself. Save some in the tank, because it's bad. And that I'm watching you're doing rest, pause sets, drop sets. I'm watching Chris Bumstead train. Everything seems like it's beyond failure. For me, almost every set is past failure, and it's working. You look at all the top bodybuilders, and yet they're training beyond failure. And so I'm thinking, well, these studies are saying don't train so hard, but these studies are using soccer players and university kids. And so how do they really know what's really supposed to be done?
Exactly. I don't believe in leaving reps in the tank. The only time I may do that is if I'm like a week out from a show. But
absolutely, week out from the show, ready to get, you're dehydrated, getting injured. And of course, if you just join the gym, you're not going to be, okay, you're day one in the gym, watch Nick's video and watch him do a rest pause set and drop sets. It's like, no, that doesn't work. But once you become intermediate and get into the advanced stages, you need to train in advanced techniques, because you need a new stimulus for growth. If you keep doing the same thing, your body has no reason to grow. You need to add something to it. Progressive overload, train harder than last time.
And I also believe in training in different rep ranges too. I think that also is a big component in size as well. Like for legs, for example, if you're going to do a hack squat, 1 week you could do a failure set of 6 to 8, and then the next week a failure set of 12 to 15. I think it's very important to be strong in every rep range you can be strong in.
I think that's a great advice. I also do the same thing. I mix up my rep ranges. For the most part, I stick into a higher rep range now, usually 15 plus, but I'm older, 46. I have a lot of injuries, but I know that when I would power lift. I was a power lifter and a bodybuilder for some phases of the year. I do really heavy when I wanted to peak out in strength. Other phases I did light. So I mixed it up back and forth. It kept my body guessing a little bit, kept me from being bored, because part of being good at the sport is being persistent and continuing to do this. So many people join the gym. They might have great progress for the first 2 years and then they give up. But to be a bodybuilder, it takes 10 years plus. You can't just get it overnight.
No, I agree. And that was another thing. Like, I look at the gym as my fun time, you know? So like, and this isn't against anyone, but I was never a fan of having a logbook. I always felt like that would probably stress me out, knowing if I didn't beat my numbers or anything else, like my whole workout would be ruined. So, and again, like when it comes to like the incline dumbbell press, like that was my bread and butter workout for yesterday, right? So I know what I did. I remember what I did. So next week I'll try and beat that or match it, but I don't feel the need to write everything down. You know, I like to just go in, have fun, get a good workout, that's how a lot of people are. I was never a fan of the whole logbook situation.
And I have to agree. I think fun is paramount in anything. Like I did bodybuilding, 59 shows, powerlifting 70. It was always fun. That's why I did it. It wasn't just about the trophy, the plastic trophy, or the money people keep saying. It was about the fun I get from doing it. And since I've gotten older, now I compete in bike races and it's fun. And I don't track workouts. I'm not going to say I'm going to do this many watts or this heart rate for this. I enter a bike race and I try to win the race. And exactly. It's always, and how hard am I going? I'm going to try to win the race. I'm sprinting as fast as I can to try to win. And so I'm getting a huge amount of gains. I'm benefiting from it. And it's fun and it's exciting. And so long as it's fun and exciting, I'm going to keep getting better at cardio.
And that's the ideal goal. You know, I just feel like if you get too into it, sometimes things can backfire. You know, I train to have fun. I know I'm training hard. I know I'm progressing. And I don't need to write it down and try to beat every number. Because honestly, I don't always do the same workout week after week. I know people are really big on that. That's how they track their progress and stuff. I kind of go in like by feel, like I'm going to do this workout for today and that's it.
I think that tracking and doing that progressive overload and using the same workout, it's good when you're a beginner, intermediate, but once you get advanced, you know your body more than anyone. Like I can coach someone, but say I was coaching you, you know your body more than me. I can say, do this, but like, you know. And so when I thought I'm going to get somebody to hire to coach me, I'm like, but they give me a program, like, but that doesn't make sense because I know my body this way. And so it's very difficult to coach someone that's at an elite level. You have to take into account, what do they know? Because oftentimes they know more than you do about many aspects of their training, diet, nutrition, and so on. And so you have to really keep that into account.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why even like with this new training program, I'm always open to try new things. And if it doesn't work, it's not for me. I'll let my coach know I'm going back to my old thing and keep progressing that way. But it's working. I like the results. I like that I don't have any like aches and pains. And I think that just allows, because again, like everything is getting hit every like 7 to 8 days, but I'm still hitting those body parts periodically between those days. So it's still hitting it without really hitting it, but still allowing proper recovery before really, hitting it hard when it's time. And I see a lot of progression within each muscle. I'm never, like I said, I don't have any sore tendons. So overall, and especially being this heavy, usually when I get this heavy, everything fucking hurts at this point. But I feel great, and I like the way things are going so far.
And as far as like rest time between, I'm like really curious, like how long are you resting between these really hard sets of chest? I mean, the drop set, like to me, it takes like 5 minutes to recover. Like
typically, like, so for rest periods, if it's like if I'm working up to like, a top set, before I do that top set, I'll rest. I'll probably go 2-3 minutes before doing it. And then like when I do my back off set, I'll still rest for another 2 to 3 minutes. But with drop sets, those can take a while.
So if you do a triple drop set for chest, you might take 5, 6, 7, or even more minutes between sets.
I do it. I like to have a spot when I do those because you fail pretty quickly. So I like to have someone to give me force reps on every drop that I do. So it'll take a good 3 to 4 minutes for sure with those.
Okay, so basically after warm-up sets, so just so that people get an understanding, 2 or 3 minutes between most of your sets. And if it's a really, really hard set, 3 or 4 minutes. Is that typically how you're doing your training?
Like a pause or a drop, yeah.
Yeah. And because a lot of people will actually think that the less rest they get, the better. They're wanting to rest 30 seconds or a minute. They're like, oh, I train really hard. I only rest 35 seconds between sets. And I'm like, that's cardio. I mean, what do you think? Like, do you believe that people could build as much muscle with like less rest? Like, or is it really important to get that rest?
I think it's very important. I mean, obviously Jay Cutler's, a different breed here, but I think in order to get the optimum growth, strength, and keep progressing in that direction, then yeah, I think you need longer rest periods in order to reach that certain goal. Now, when I'm in prep, I try to maintain that as long as possible, but I think everyone gets to a point where it's like, it's time to switch over a little bit. And that's when I won't say I do more volume per se, but the rest periods aren't as long.
And switching gears here, we haven't talked anything about cardio in relation to this training. Are you doing daily cardio sessions? Are you doing, is on that day off, 2 on, 1 off? Is that a cardio only day, a stretching, like what kind of days are you doing? Like as far as cardio go?
So right now I do cardio probably four days a week for 20 to 25 minutes. But when it is a complete off day, I don't do cardio, but that's where I'll do a lot of my stretching. But being in the off season, I'm a big component on it's off days or off days, like rest, recover, do your thing. And those days, the majority will get like my deep tissue work done or anything of that nature taken care of.
And do you do a warm up before you lift the weights? Like, are you walking or something? You're just kind of one of those guys, get into the gym and let's get going.
Oh, I always warm up. I always got to do a little warm up. But when I warm up, it's like the first exercise I'm doing. Like I don't really stretch or anything prior to the first exercise. I kind of like I'll use incline dumbbell press as another example. Like I'll use maybe like 30 pounds and just kind of hold a stretch and keep going like that and just keep progressing up in weight until I'm ready to really get going.
Yeah, actually, for me, I'm actually against stretching before lifting weights. It's been shown to decrease strength. You use the stretch reflex. But what I would do is I would go into the gym. Maybe I'm doing a 10-minute bike ride or elliptical or walk. And then I start with a lightweight. For example, on the bench, it'd be a plate aside, do 20 reps, 2 plates for 15, 3 plates for 10, 4 plates for 8, and then do my last set of, say it's 455 for 8 reps or something like that. That's my heavy set. Then I would do a down set where I'd drop the weight a bit and do some more reps, and then save the stretching for the end of the workout. After you've done your entire body, stretch it out. And for me, that was the best way to stay flexible and mobile. Is that similar to how you would do it?
Yeah. Like after chest, what I like to do is, kind of grab like benches and just kind of lean into it and really stretch my chest out, and like, so I can get a nice deep stretch and kind of hold that for like 20 to 30 seconds. Or another thing I like to do is even on like a pec deck with very minimum weight and just kind of hold it there for like, again, 20 seconds, just to really stretch it all out. And I think that helps me a lot.
And I mean, I'm a pretty big guy, but I'm nowhere near your size. The biggest I've ever been is like 232, and you're at 292. And I found that it was hard for me at that weight to move around and do stuff. And so I can't even imagine what it's like. But could you briefly like explain what does it actually feel like on a regular day to be 290, like sitting on a plane, getting into a taxi, like moving around, like, is it weird? Like, or are you just so used to it? Like, like describe some of that, because I'm really curious.
I'm at the point where I'm kind of like used to it all now, but it's still weird. Like sitting on a plane is ridiculous. It's just not, I have to sit first class. And even sometimes on certain planes, first class is just not first class. And even using a plane bathroom, it's ridiculous. I can't even. So I'm used to it. I mean, for being 292, I'll tell you, like, I'm still pretty like conditioned cardiovascular wise, which is pretty, I'm happy about. But I'd say like the hardest things is, trying to touch my back and tie my shoes sometimes, I can't really bend over for too long.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. But other than that, I mean, it's not as bad, I think, because my body gets used to being a certain weight now. And also me being this heavy is also the most conditioned I've ever been. Like, I'm not like really watery by any means, like I normally would. So, I mean, I overall feel really good.
And honestly, I mean, we got to throw this out there. You're 292 pounds in your off season, but you still have abs. You're not fat at all. Like people talk about being sloppy in the off season, perhaps, or you have to kind of eat big to get big. But I've watched your videos and you seem to eat and remain extremely conditioned, in my opinion. Like what body fat percentage would you have yourself sitting at? Like if you had to guess, like I know you don't know 100%, but like give us a guesstimate.
Maybe between like 10 and 12.
And so listen to this, 10 and 12% body fat in his off season. Like so many people, and I have this debate with so many people all the time. I don't know if you've heard me talking about main gaining, that you can build muscle without getting really fat. I mean, if I feel like you're living proof that you can main gain, because obviously you're not going to be 4% body fat year round. After the show is over, go ahead.
Healthy and it doesn't feel good year round. So, but I do think, and this is where a huge debate can come in, right? I think maybe if you're just starting out and you want to put that size on, sure, I think maybe getting fat can benefit just to get things moving quicker. But I think once you reach a certain level, like, you know, I'll say my level, for example, I don't really need to grow dramatically anymore. So for me, I need to just put size on in the right places and more refinement. So yes, I need to be in a good amount of a surplus, but I don't need dramatic amount of size. I just need enough to where I can maintain good condition, but still get what I need out of it.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mike Israetel. He has about 300,000 followers. Yeah. He's got Renaissance periodization, quite knowledgeable. You know, he's a PhD. He's a smart guy. And we had this debate, and I asked him about main gaining. I thought he was going to be, you know, on the opposite side of me, but he said he feels that most people should be bulking between 10 and 20% body fat, probably, you know, 15% at most for most people, and that extra fat on top of that isn't going to be beneficial. And so I wanted to ask you, like, what percent body fat, because for you, perhaps it's 10 to 12, but you said you've already put on the muscle. But if you were a younger Nick Walker, and perhaps you're only 200 pounds of muscle at this point, how much body fat do you think would have been like the ideal amount for you, like you to bulk? Like, would it have been 15, 20, more than 20? Like, is there ever a time when somebody should get like quite fat, like 25, 30%, or no?
I don't think anyone should get like overly fat to where they don't even look like they work out. Like, I still think a beginner, whatever the case is, like, you should still have a physique where it's like, you can tell he's in the off season, but he's not like, he doesn't look like, you know, a fatty. But I would say, like, realistically, and everybody's body's different, I wouldn't go any higher than 15 to 20.
Wow. So, I mean, so I think the problem is most people don't know what 15 to 20% body fat looks like, because 15% for me is extremely healthy. Like, that is kind of like the ideal health zone. It's not an athlete zone, but it's for the average person that just doesn't care about social media or being the perfect physique, just being like, I'm a healthy 30-year-old or whatever. 15%, that's amazing. And so what I see is a lot of people get into bodybuilding, and obviously they want to put on as much muscle as possible, and they have no abs at all, but they're skinny fat. They have no abs, they don't have a lot of muscle, and they want to put on a bunch of muscle. They have 25% body fat. And so the trainer says you need to eat big to get big. And so they start force feeding cheeseburgers and so on. And I'm like, you're already bulked. You're already fat. You don't need to get more fat. Now, if that same person showed up and had a six pack, veins everywhere, and was skinny, and then you say, hey, you should bulk up. I'm like, yeah, you should. If you're super lean, like, do you know Tristan Lee, perhaps? Like,
yes, that kid needs to eat.
He needs to eat to gain more muscle. I think if he increases body fat, he would get a lot bigger. But so he's perhaps trying to main gain, but at a very, very lean body fat percentage. Same as Jeff Cavalier. These guys are extremely shredded. But if you're a normal built guy, 15 to 20%, I have no belief that eating more is going to help you build more muscle. Like, once you've gotten to the point where you can't see any of your abs, like no outline, eating more isn't going to benefit.
Too fat at that point.
Yeah. And so if you had to give advice to a teenager that's joining the gym, trying to build muscle, and like, so I really want to help the younger people, what advice would you give an 18-year-old joining the gym? What would you tell them as far as maybe training, diet, supplements, anything? What advice would you give these younger people?
I'm a big component of going by a mirror than an actual scale. I think a mirror tells more of a story than a scale ever will. Um, so look at yourself and determine your goals that way. You know, if you feel like you're too fat, you know, start at a little bit of a deficit and then slowly increase from there. And training wise, I'm a big component of training heavy. I think it's, as long as it's safe, of course, and the technique is proper. I'm a big fan of progressive overload, but in different rep ranges. Now, people have different views of progressive overload to a degree. Um, like, for example, I like to do sometimes sets of 8 until I can no longer get 8 reps. To me, that's a style of progressive overload. Where another style I'll do sometimes, if I'm really, really, really want to go heavy, I'll do like the feeder sets where, you know, you do like a set for 15, a set for 8, a set for 2, a set for 2, and then you hit your top set for like 10. I like to do both. But the safer route, I think, would be trying to target for a beginner a rep range, you know, of 10 reps, but 10 reps every set. And so you can no longer get 10 reps and, you know, just progress that way.
And do you think they should do a total body exercise to start, or would it be better to split it up? Like, and
I'm a big component of splitting it up. I think, you know, I've done like the, you know, the push pull leg and all that. I think it has its place, but I think a beginner should just focus, in my opinion, on each body part directly. And then once they get more advanced, you know, they can try different things of what they think works best for them, you know, and go from there.
Okay. And so the kid shows up and he's a little bit chubby. You wouldn't say, hey, just keep eating and then put on the muscle, then diet later. Like, just don't worry about it. Your idea is to like slowly lose the weight and try to build muscle while doing this.
Yeah. Like obviously their metabolism's not moving as quickly. So obviously I put them in a little bit of a deficit, give them some cardio, some high intense training, and see how that goes over time. And once the weight is, you know, he looks in a good spot to start increasing food, then we slowly start to increase week after week, you know, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how progression's going, how he looks, and just go from there.
And so what I'm a fan of, I'll just tell you what I do, see if you disagree or agree. If I have somebody that say it's 25% body fat, they're a little bit chubby and they want to add muscle. What I first will get them to do is slowly decrease calories, as you said, in a slight calorie deficit, get down to 15%. And then when they get to that point, I would then say, okay, now we're going to up calories at maintenance or slightly above and keep your body fat at about 15 and slowly add muscle. Other people would say diet down from 25 to perhaps 10, and then bulk up to like 17, 18, drop to 10, bulk and cut back and forth. Versus me, I'm just a fan of slowly get down to the 15 and just stay there all the time. Do you think which method, and obviously it's just for you, it doesn't matter what your answer is. What do you personally think?
Well, see, it all depends on what their goals are too. I think the healthier approach obviously is what you said, the first one, you know, getting them down to a good 15 and then kind of maintaining that, and, you know, upping the calories slightly and, you know, letting them gain muscle that way. Versus, you know, if they wanted to possibly compete or get, you know, really, really shredded, then yeah, I would bring them all the way down and slowly progress them back up.
And I think that's a great point you're bringing up. If they wanted to compete. And so, yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the competitor. Now they've been at it for 2 or 3 years. Like I did my first show in grade 12 and I'm doing my first show and I'm dieting down. And then after the show is over, and say you got down to 6, 7, 8%, like a normal bodybuilder would, what body fat should they then go up to in their off season? Remember, they're 20, they've only done one show. Should they bulk up to 20% or more of the 10 to 12 like you're at, or 12, like what percent? Let's just give some general guidelines for that first time kind of newer competitor.
I'm a big fan of just taking it very slow. Like after a show, obviously, you know, get really into it. I would obviously let them enjoy that weekend, you know, have fun. If you put on a little too much, it's water, we'll take it right off. Not a big deal. That Monday, obviously, assuming the show is like a Saturday, let them enjoy Saturday night, Sunday. Monday, depending on how they look and how much they ate, I might put them in a little bit of a deficit just to, you know, get all the water weight off if they decided to, you know, be an a-hole about their food. But if not, and they look pretty much as sharp as they did on stage, obviously just a little bit watery, I would just slowly, you know, put them in a surplus and see how they progress week after week, make increases or not increases if they're progressing just fine with what's going on, and go from there. I think and I'll even use for me as an example. I think a lot of us, at my age when I was younger coming up, I think we progressed the food a lot harder, which created us to get bigger a lot quicker, which sometimes can diminish the physique a little bit. And so if looking back, if I could have done things differently, I would have probably taken the food a little bit of a slower route, honestly. So that's how I would do it for everyone else.
Great tip. So not pushing the food quite so much after the show. And what level do you think you should cut it off? Because I know you've trained with Anthony Mantello. And for me, my first experience dealing with Anthony was I had done a video about him because he had gained like 25 pounds in a couple days after his first show. He was 17 years of age. And he was like, oh my God, he couldn't stop eating. And then I made a video about it. And then he did his next show and he only gained like a couple pounds. And so he's done a lot better. And you can see how he looks in his off season now versus before. It's like unbelievable. And so he's making progress without getting really big. And so what percent do you think is like a cap? Like, is it 15? Is it 20? Like where the off season percent becomes just too much?
Again, I think it's, person dependent. I think everybody holds body fat differently. But I think just a general, body fat percentage, I would say at least a good 20.
20 about the limit. I would have to agree. If you're past 20%, even if it helps you build muscle, I don't think that's very beneficial because imagine the diet that you're going to have to go on to lose that body fat.
And I think you would even agree. You don't really have to be in such a dramatic surplus to put size on, because eventually you're just in time, especially after a show. I mean, that's obviously the great time to kind of enjoy food. And because I'm a firm believer in the rebound phase. You could pack on so much muscle that someone could do in like 2 years.
And, and speaking of the rebound phase, what I do believe is you've been dieting really hard for say 3 months. Okay. And so for that 3-month period of time, you've hardly put any muscle on. And I believe it's almost like a reflex that the body has. It's almost like newbie gains. For 3 months, your body has been in such a depleted state and been unable to grow muscle, really. And then all of a sudden it has nutrients and you're resting more and you're not overtraining. And so you're going to be able to just grow like a weed at that point. I really do believe, and I agree with you, that right after a show is done, you're probably going to gain a lot of muscle and you don't need to eat crazy amounts of food. If you've only been eating 2,000 calories a day and you go to 3,000, it's amazing. You might eat 4,000 in your off season, but 3 compared to 2. Wow.
So again, it's very person dependent. If they have fast metabolism, slow metabolism, like sometimes someone who can get lean fast after a show, you can probably feed them a lot coming right out of a show versus somebody like me who can just gain weight by just looking at food. I got to start a little slower. I mean, everything's person dependent.
And speaking of calories and stuff, and you read and everyone's going to think you must eat 10,000 calories a day, but how much do you actually eat in the off season and in prep? Like what are the real numbers, like the honest numbers? How much are we eating in the off season in prep?
I don't know exact calorie amount. But I know for like when I competed last year, New York, the Arnold, the Olympia, we got as low as maybe like 150 grams of carbs a day. But then my body, it gets into some type of overdrive and now I got to eat like a lot. And I know toward the end of, I'd say the Arnold prep, I was probably eating more than I was in the off season, just trying to hold what I had. Which a lot of people will be like, oh, you're lucky. But sometimes the more you eat, the hungrier you get, sometimes the shittier you actually feel. So it wasn't always all good. But yeah, food wise, and also being the way I was already lean for, pretty much after New York going into the Arnold, into the Olympia, like I was able to eat a sufficient amount of food. Like I don't think I got lower. My low day was maybe like 200 grams of carbs.
What about calories? Are you in the 3,000 zone at this time? Because Chris Bumstead was as low as I think 1,800 for the Mr.
I don't think I ever got that low. Maybe as low as like 2,500, maybe.
And would that be just for peak week or for like a couple weeks at a time you're eating below 3,000?
So it would probably be like we would do like, so a lot of my what we did for New York, like Sunday would be like, Sunday would be like my leg day. So I was to a certain point in prep, I was allowed to almost have like a free day. I would have a big breakfast, 2 to 3 regular meals, and then a huge dinner. And then whatever I was that next day, I'd be up like 4 or 5 pounds. And that from that day, we would drop the calories dramatically. And depending on how quick I would drop, I might get like a high day in within there and then drop, and then Sunday kind of repeat the whole method.
And so a lot of people think that it's all set in stone, that you write out a diet and it's exactly 2,500 and the next week it's this. But really what I'm hearing from you and what I do is there's a range of calories that are being eaten. Some days are higher than others. It's a mix. It's somewhere in a range. And depending on what you're doing is going to depend on how many calories you get to eat.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of keeping the body guessing. So I'm a big, like even now I do somewhat of a carb cycle. My calories are pretty high, but like on leg days and my back days, like they're even higher. And my low days is not low, or my off days are not low food by any means, but it's a lot lower than, my regular training days. So I think that kind of helps if, you calculate it correctly, that helps keep the body in some sort of a good body fat check. And sometimes I even think it allows you the freedom to even have a cheat meal. Like I'm a big fan of having a cheat meal my off day sometimes, not more than a training day.
Yeah. And I think as far as cheat meals go, I think that it should be part of the diet. I don't like even calling it a cheat meal. I like to call it an off meal plan, like an off plan meal, because if you see it as a cheat, it's like the diet's not working. And for me, a diet should be a diet you can do for the rest of your life forever. And so if you're restricting certain foods that you can't have, then to me, that's not a diet that's going to work. But if you say 1 meal a day, you can have anything you want up to say it's 800 calories for that meal. And if you're eating 5 meals a day and the other 4 are chicken, broccoli, and rice or French toast or whatever you happen to enjoy, and that 1 meal is maybe it's like your burrito or whatever, then that is going to work. Even in a competition prep diet, like if even on a diet for the Mr. Olympia, I still think that 1 meal a day, you can eat something that's not what's considered typically healthy.
Oh, I agree. Like in the off season now, and I also think it's good for just a mental break, just to even like go out with your, wife, girlfriend, friends, and just enjoy a nice meal. And sometimes your body will respond really well, and you might lose weight the next morning from it. It's funny how the body works sometimes, but I just think if you know how to, and I'm a big fan of staying hungry. I don't like to, no matter how big I get, I do not like to have the full feeling all day long. Because I know once I get to that point, I feel like my metabolism kind of just stalled and now I have to reboot it. That's why I've become a big component on just increasing food very slowly instead of making these huge drastic jumps. I don't like after I'm done eating a meal, I don't mind, obviously feeling a little full, but like I don't want to be like, oh, I can't eat no more. I like 20 minutes later, I'm already hungry. Especially during training, I don't want to feel like I'm full and bloated,
And so you're at 292 pounds, and a lot of people would be saying, well, why don't you just get to 300? It's this magic number. Is there a reason why you don't just push the food a little bit more, up the calories a bit more? Like you're saying, you're not quite full. It doesn't sound like you're force feeding. Why aren't you getting to 300, 320, going from, you're so lean, 10 to 12. You could go up to 15% body fat and still be very lean. And so what is holding you back from pushing food that little bit more?
I like to track that by how my energy is and how I feel in the gym. My energy is great in the gym. I am now progressing literally leaps and bounds in weights and reps in the gym week by week. So obviously what I'm doing is working, and my weight goes up little by little. I don't feel the need to push it so hard, because then if you push it too hard too quick, I think then your energy in the gym, your progress in gyms can just stall. And then you start to go backwards. Everything clicks, perfectly when everything's in line.
I agree with you. And I say, this is the advice I give people. I say, eat enough food so that you have great pumps in the gym. Your sex drive is normal. You can get sleep. And if you don't eat enough, you're going to notice that you no longer get the pumps. You don't have the same energy, enthusiasm as you're going to the gym. And so as long as you're eating enough that you feel good or training good, recovering, why eat more? But some people think, no, you got to bulk up even more because then you're going to gain more muscle. And Greg's an idiot because you can't gain muscle while main gaining. And I'm like, well, I've done it my whole life. They'll argue, no, you bulked up and cut. But the one time I really, really tried to bulk up when I was younger, I gained all this weight and I ended up being so overweight. Like I couldn't even see my tricep when I would flex. Like that's as soft as I could get.
Sure.
It took me 12 weeks of crash dieting to get back into shape to bodybuild. And I competed at the same weight a year later as the year. I'm looking and I'm like, I didn't improve this year. And so I gave up on the whole bulking thing.
I do think to a degree, like, because you got to think about it. If you bulk so hard, it's just going to make your diet 10 times harder. You're going to have to be in a deficit way longer and probably like zero to no carbs or little to no carbs. And what for what? Like, say you're like, you stand on stage, you know, for example, like 250, and then you go to like 320, 330 in the off season. For what? You just simply put on unnecessary weight for no reason.
Exactly. And for me, I had to also do a lot more cardio. And then what happens to your legs? Like, how much cardio are you doing in the off? I mean, in the pre-contest, you're probably not needing to do a whole lot because you don't have a lot of fat to lose.
The most I've done, I like to use the New York prep as like the one prep because I had like an off season prior to really going into that. So as you know, going prep after prep, you don't have to do as much. But I think the most I got up to for that prep was 45 minutes.
And that's probably just like a walking pace. That's not hit cardio or some crazy.
No, I'm a big fan of riding the recumbent bike.
So lists like low intensity, steady state cardio, just enough to burn some calories.
I mean, the mental craziness I am, I would pedal really hard and the resistance pretty high.
I mean, I'm curious, and you probably don't know these numbers, but do you have any idea the watts that you were pushing during these rides? Is that something that would ring a bell for you?
No, but I know I would like be on like a resistant level 12 to 14, and I would just pedal as hard as I could for 45 minutes.
Now, what I noticed for me, the recumbent bike where it's leaning back, I can't put as much power as when I'm on a more of an upright bike. So I always choose the upright bike over the recumbent. And when you first get into bike riding, because it's leg dominant, very leg specific, it's hard to go as hard. Your legs kind of give out before your lungs. But as you get more and more trained, because I'm a cyclist, as you get more and more trained, my legs are fresh. Like I'm going as hard as I can, and I can't breathe. Like it's my lungs that are giving out. So when you do your cardio, is it, because your legs are massive, is it the legs that are getting lactic acid? Are you getting to that point? Or is the breathing hard? Like, what do you feel?
The breathing is hard, but the legs just get so pumped that it's like, it hurts. It hurts.
I know that pump feeling. And if you keep at it, it literally goes like away. Like you don't feel it. Like it's a bit of a pump, but you don't
gotta fight through it for a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy. Like 4 years ago or so, I just started bike riding again. I'm like, I'm going to get into it. I go for a 15-minute mountain bike ride. I get back and my legs, I'm like, what is wrong with me? Because I used to do triathlons as a kid. And so I was, Mr. Fitness when I was younger, and I lost it all because I'm like, well, I'm not going to do all this cardio on bodybuilding. And then I get older. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get back into cardio. And I love the cardio.
I love cardio, especially in the off season, but I hate it during prep though.
Oh, it's hard when you have no energy. But like what I do is I'll watch a YouTube videos, keep me occupied, or I'm in a race, like watching. So is there something that you do during your cardio you recommend? Like what gets you through it?
Honestly, like as cliche as it sounds, I just watch a lot of motivation videos on YouTube. It gets me pumped, especially like now I have a goal to win Olympia. I always watch all the, old Olympia videos, and that just gets me pumped during cardio. And sometimes I'll even go harder in cardio just because it's like, I got to win. So now, sometimes you watch certain things that motivate you and you just start going harder.
Well, absolutely. I remember it was over 20 years ago. I competed in a drug tested national championships. It was like 2000. Ronnie Coleman is the guest poser. He's 6 weeks out with strided glutes, 295 pounds. And he's coming out, he's going, and he's like pumping up and I'm like, and I'm watching this videotape of him doing it. I'm rewinding it and watching it. And I'm like going harder on the bike, just getting the cardio done. Like Ronnie Coleman, I'm watching. And that's the first bodybuilder I ever saw that had like a lot of muscle. Like I'd been an amateur and stuff. And, and I run into Ronnie Coleman and he's in the elevator and there's two old ladies and I'm looking over and I'm looking at the ladies. And if they had said, this is an alien, I think they would have believed it more that a human being could look like that. Just veins, like so thick, 295 pounds. And so just mind blowing. But I mean, at this point, that is the kind of look that you would have. Like, do you walk around with like the old, like this elevator example? Do some people look at you that have never seen you before and are just like eyes wide open thinking, what am I witnessing right now? Because it has to be.
Yeah. I always think like it's a humble feeling, because it's like, A lot of people don't like to be looked at a lot, and sometimes I don't like to be looked at neither. But at the same time, it's humbling because it's like people recognize your hard work. You know, they might think you look like a freak, but in a sense, it's even the negative comments to a degree you can take as a compliment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like even when I was bodybuilding prep, I mean, I'm nowhere near your size, but you get the steroids, GH, and
Oh yeah,
screaming
yeah.
at you, and I'm like thinking, well, that's a compliment because if they didn't think that, then what the hell I've been doing? You know what I mean?
Yep, of course.
And so I wanted to talk about like the genetics of it. And so for some reason, I don't know if you've heard this, people are like, Nick Walker doesn't really have great genetics. It's just he worked really hard. And I think it's because they look back at some photo of you when you were a teenager and you didn't have like the hugest muscle, but I'm like, wasn't he like 17? Because I'm looking at you 2016. I think it was heavyweight nationals and you were like a top 6 or something. And I'm
Yeah,
like, were you
my first
19 or
USA.
20 there?
I was 21.
21 years of age. And I'm like, that's bigger than I was at my biggest in my life in my 30s as a pro. And you're an amateur at 21. I'm like thinking, where do you see not having good genetics? So like, what is that? Like, why do people think that you don't have good genetics? Do you think you have good genetics? And when did you realize that you were born to be an IFBB pro and not just a pro, but one in the Olympia?
I think people say I have bad genetics because of how blocky my waist is.
I think you have a small waist. I don't understand it. I watch your physique. I think that you have a small waist, shredded, great proportion. Like I don't see the bad genetics. Like it blows my mind. You don't have a bloated belly like it. I don't know what people are saying.
Especially this off season, that's been like my main goal is to keep the waist in check. And being 292, this is by far like the tightest my waist has ever been, which I'm very happy about. And I'm also a big component of training abs. I don't train them as frequently in the off season. Obviously, I still hit them like 2 or 3 times a week. But I do think obviously training abs helps keep it tight.
When did you think that you could become an IFBB pro and like not just a good, like just not just a pro, but like a great pro? Was it like after your first show or was it till that nationals? Like
first USAs, there was over 30 guys. And at least to me at that time, they all looked phenomenal. So I'm like, this is my first one. I'm like, this isn't gonna go well. And then I got first call out. I was like, ooh. Then I got top 6. And for me, it was at that moment like I said, I can do this. I have something big here. But then after that, it was kind of like a sticking point because then the following year I did North Americans and I got 6th at that show. And then I did nationals later in the year and I got 6th at that show. And then actually 2018, I didn't compete. I took that whole year off. And then 2019, which was when me and Matt linked up, I did USAs again and I got 2nd at that show. And even though everyone thought I should have won, I look at it as like a blessing because I always said when I turn pro, I want to compete as a pro. I just don't want a pro card. And me getting that extra year and then coming back in 2020 to win the North Americans. And then I was able to compete 6 weeks later at the Chicago Pro and got 4th behind, Akeem Williams, Justin Rodriguez, and Max Charles, who, are top elite bodybuilders at that time frame. So at that moment, I knew I was good to compete as a pro. And that was my
absolutely.
goal.
And you had a lot of attention as an amateur. I remember like, for example, Nick Strength and Power making videos about you and looking and like, holy, look at this guy's size. And could he actually win a pro show the first time he enters? So you had that. Now let's rewind it a little bit, like to your first show. Like how old were you and how much did you weigh? How did you do? Did you like, had you been training for a long time? Like, I don't really know about your earlier years.
So I started training by around like 13, 14 years old. And I graduated high school at 230 pounds. It's like genetically, like my family's just big, like we're big people. So that was obviously nothing going on there. 230 pounds. And then after I graduated, I wanted to do my first show. That was a complete disaster. I got on stage at 159 pounds.
Wow. So from at 230, A muscle 230, or were you a sloppy obese?
No, I wasn't sloppy, but I wasn't all muscle by any means. I was definitely I was always, for me, my body
Could you have
holds
any abs at all?
a little bit. Yeah, my body
230. That's massive.
even now, I believe my body holds more water than fat. So once the water comes off, like now we see what we're working with.
And so you competed at 159. So did you crash diet, lose a ton of muscle? Like what happened? Because 230, there's no way you need to be 159.
No. So basically, I try to do it on my own, so to speak. And then, once I hit like the 4-week out mark, I then hired someone to help me. And I lost 30 pounds in about 4 weeks.
Wow. So after you were 230 with great genetics, a big dude. I mean, I was 232 at my biggest. We're about the same height. You're only a little bit taller than me. And so as my most heaviest, and I'm a professional bodybuilder, you as a 18-year-old were the same weight as me. And then you dieted down to 159 pounds, probably lost a lot of muscle in the process. People see this photo and they're like, oh, he doesn't have really that great of genetics, but that was not your true self. That was you with having lost muscle, not doing things right. And so you must have had muscle memory and rebounded like crazy after that. I'm assuming like taking that process after that show, what happened to your physique then?
I exploded once I started eating. So like my next prep, I did start that prep, I believe, at like 240. And that was a lot cleaner. And then I did still lose a good amount of weight. And then like my next teen show, I just made 198.
Wow. So a light heavy from 159 to 198. So that's like 40. So you're like 40 pounds better. And you were 240 in the off season to 198. So you only dropped about 40 pounds, about 20% of your body weight. So very reasonable. And were you lean at this 198? Were you like in contact?
I was shredded, except like, and I'm going to say it has a lot to do with just muscle maturity. My legs weren't like peeled by any means. Like they were separated, but like they weren't anything crazy. But the upper body was ready to go for sure.
And this is as a teenager.
Yeah.
So you're a teenager and about 5'7", and you're at the top of the light heavyweight class. I mean, you must have looked like a fully grown man competing for the overall at this point.
Yeah, I won every teen show possible at that point. And I didn't win any open division shows, but I was always like second or third.
Wow. And so anyone that says, Nick Walker, his genetics are shit. It's like, no, dude, like anyone that can get to this amount of muscle to be on the stage, the genetics are through the roof. And obviously it's not, and I don't want to take anything away with it's just genetics. It's the genetics, the hard work, the diet, the training, everything goes into it. It all adds up. And that what gives you the physique in the end.
And it's just consistency over time, like your body just gets to a point where it just, you stay consistent and the progress is just endless.
Absolutely. I mean, I started training at 10 and I did my first show. I was in grade 12. I think it was 18. And I competed in the 140s, and slowly every year I put on 3, 4, 5 pounds of muscle. And I didn't win my first national show till I was 25 years of age. I only weighed 149 pounds. So I was a lightweight champion. And really looking at the photos, like, I look like I had a lot of muscle, but I was only 149 pounds, which really is small for men's physique.
Yeah.
And so I kept progressing from there and got heavier. And I eventually won the drug tested division in middleweight, and I won the overall. Didn't get my pro card. Then I started taking PDs, grew a ton of muscle at that point, got my pro card, and I kept pushing. I wanted to be in the Olympia, but I was done growing. You got to think I'm in my late 30s at this point. And so that was as big as I could get. So do you feel like there's a time when you're not going to be able to keep adding muscle? Like for me, late 30s, you're only 27. I mean, where is the sky? Is the sky the limit? Like how much more massive can you get?
I don't know. I hear it like from everyone, like you haven't even hit your prime yet. So I just think as long as I stay on the path that I am, I keep doing things the right way. I could probably keep gaining as much size as I possibly can. And I'd say until mid 30s.
Wow. I mean, do you have like a dream physique? Like when you close your eyes, like I close my eyes and I'm like picturing like Chris Bumstead trying to look like that. Is there a dream physique? Is there like you, but like with as big of a legs as big Ramy, or like, is there some physique that you envision? Like, what would you want to look like?
Honestly, my favorite physique was probably Jay Cutler 2001.
Okay, we've spoken a lot about genetics. You have amazing genetics. Jay Cutler, Big Ram, all obviously amazing genetics. What about the people that don't have amazing genetics? Can they eventually get a pro card if they just work hard enough? Like, how important are genetics? Is it like, so some people have to realize not everyone can be a pro. Like a lot of people think, no, if you take enough supplements of all
Yeah.
kinds, you can eventually do it. And I'm personally thinking, what's wrong with you? Half the people I see taking supplements don't even look like they work out. What is your opinion? You think that you can take any average guy, you know, with the hard work, dedication, the best trainer in the world, you know, could they get a pro card?
Yes. I mean, I do think so. They just have to be very on point. They never miss a training session, never miss a meal, train as hard as possible. Like it all comes down to how bad that person actually wants it. You know, like some people say for me, I'm a little too extreme because I take it to a level where it's like an obsession. Like I don't go out, I don't party. I literally stay in my house. I go out periodically, but not too often. And I just eat, sleep, and train. And people are like, well, why don't you want to have a life and do this, do that? I look at it in a sense where bodybuilding is probably the only sport that is like, you won't do it for long. Like there's no longevity with bodybuilding. So I could retire when I'm 31, when I'm 32, whenever I'm just like, I'm done with this. And I have things planned that set me up for down the road. And then that's when I'll start living life. Right now, there's a goal at hand. And that's, you know, that's the main goal, is to win Olympia. So I'm very focused and I'm very obsessed. And I think anyone with that clear mindset can achieve anything, shit genetics or not.
And I think people are going to like your answer a lot more than mine. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. You're really optimistic. I'm hugely pessimistic. And I'm wondering because, so I see you have such amazing genetics and you've been able to lift weights and you try different training programs, you get a lot of muscle. And I've been a coach and myself and my brother, like, and, you know, and I see a lot of people and some people, they train really, really hard and they're doing the best they can. And they just can't seem to pack on the muscle. I'm picturing like that ectomorph frame, like the marathon runner type body. I bike ride with a lot of cyclists, and I'm thinking that guy could do. They could spend $100,000 a year on supplements. They could have the best trainer eat, and they would never win an amateur show, is what I'm thinking. But I mean, I'm sure everyone's like loves to hear you because it's not fun for me to say, hey, guess what? Your genetics suck. You're probably never going to look good. Like that's kind of my attitude. I'm more like, hey, your genetics suck. You can still get a lot better, but you're not going to look even as good as me as a natural. Like back in the day when I was natural, most people on steroids, I don't think can even look as good as I did natural. And frankly, I was winning overalls as a natural competitor against people taking anything. And so my personal belief, PDs and stuff maybe can help you like 15%, like it's the icing on the cake. But the genetics, the hard work, the training, that's the bulk of it. That's just like the extra. And so I personally don't think you can take like your Mr. Skinny Fat kid and take all the supplements they want. And all of a sudden there are 220 pounds of muscle.
No, I mean, to a degree, yes. But like for me, I was doubted my whole bodybuilding career. Like, I don't know how much you watched or followed me, but I said I was going to win New York Pro. Everyone doubted me and I did it.
Yeah, I watched all of that. Yeah.
That I was going to win the Arnold. I really got a lot of shit for that, and I won it. I said I was going to be in the top 5 of the Olympia. No one believed it, and I did that. So I just think it's really cool when people can speak up and then have all this doubt and then prove everyone wrong.
Absolutely. And I don't see that as being cocky. I see it as being very realistic in terms of your goals. I used to be accused, and probably still all the time, of being extremely cocky because somebody say, well, how do you think you're going to do in the powerlifting meet? I'll say, well, I'll probably break the world record by, I don't know, 20 pounds, and be like, well, I'm just telling you what I'm going to do because I know I can do it. And then I go and do it. And then they're like, oh, asshole. And it's like, I'm just saying what I think. And then when I became in a pro bodybuilder, how do you think you're going to do in your next show? I don't know, maybe top 10. Be like, well, that's a loser attitude. I'm like, no, I just realistically know that for me, top 10 is where I can be in that show.
Well, that's the thing. It's like a lose-lose, right? You talk about you winning a show. Now you're the most cockiest guy ever. And then you can say, I think I'll get like 8th. And that's like, well, what, you don't believe in yourself? Like, you can't win either way. So I'm a firm, but just taking the approach, like, I'm not cocky. I'm just confident in my abilities. And if you don't like it, you don't like it.
Exactly. I don't see it as being cocky. I see it as being confident and just saying like what your opinion. Now, if you say I'm going to win the Mr. Olympia my first show, and you realistically can't win it, then that's just being BS. Like some people say, I'm going to win this show my first, and I'm like thinking, you barely won your pro card. You're not winning the pro show. So to me, it's like, be honest, be realistic. Don't say you're going to bench press 700 pounds when you're only doing 500. But if you're at 500 and you say you're going to do 550 and you see the progression, then why not?
I agree. Yep.
Okay, we spoke a lot about teenagers, young people. We've been talking about bodybuilders and progression. What about natural supplements like over-the-counter stuff? And you're a younger person, a teenager. What would you recommend possibly, or do you not recommend any supplements for teenagers? Like I'm talking 18, 19 years of age. What supplements do you think natural are the best ones to take? Like if you've been training a couple of years and you want to venture into, of course, natural legal supplements, what do you think are the top three?
Are you talking like health supplements?
Supplements for your health. It could be to prevent heart attacks. It could be to build muscle, like creatine, beta-alanine, caffeine, L-citrulline, anything that people would take as far as supplementation goes to build muscle or to use for any purpose as a teen.
I think creatine is very important. There's so many studies on creatine like that helps build muscle. I think that's a given. Some people don't use it, and it's fine. I mean, I don't use it all the time, but I do think it plays a very beneficial role. Citrulline, I think, is a very good product to include, just because that just builds up more blood flow, helps with the pump. And honestly, I think EAAs. I think EAAs are essential. I mean, it helps repair the muscle, helps for recovery, helps from the muscle breakdown. And I think every beginner should have some sort of EAA in their system.
Now, do you take any supplement that has all these three in, or are you taking these? Like, what do you personally take?
The company I'm with, Hostile, they have their pre-workout called Bloodshot, which has all that it's a pump formula. Or you could have their Hostility, which is pretty identical, but more caffeine loaded. But they also sell those products separately as well. So you can kind of create your own pre-workout.
And do you have like a discount code or anything? Like if somebody's interested in getting this, like what would they do?
Yeah, they just go on the website and they could just use my code Mutant.
Okay, awesome. Now, getting back to the supplements you mentioned, creatine, I have to agree 100%. There's so many hundreds, if not 1,000 studies that show that it works. Citrulline, I love it. Great pumps. And essential amino acids, it's a more controversial one. I am a fan of it. I think it works. Right. The studies I've read will say this, but so many people think, oh, it's BS because you can get everything from whey protein. Yes, you can get everything from protein, but for people who are on a diet or perhaps not eating a lot of protein, especially vegans, vegetarians, they're not getting the quality protein that they need. Essential amino acids form all the amino acids that the body needs to build muscle. And so if you're sipping on these amino acids, it allows you to get, the protein amino acids you need all day long. If you're at the gym, you're going for a walk, whatever, it's always there. Plus it encourages you to drink more. So for me, EAAs are huge, but I get a lot of flack for that because for some reason people think that it's some scam, that it doesn't work.
I think it works. The way I like to do it, I like to drink the essential amino acids during training. And then sometimes, depending on how the day is, I like to even do a scoop after training.
Yeah. And for me, it's like an insurance. It's not like you don't need it to build muscle, but a lot of people, they skip a meal, they forget, they're busy. And so if you're drinking that, it's kind of like an insurance, similar to, in my opinion, vitamins. I don't think you need vitamins, but most people, they're not eating enough fruit and vegetables. They're skipping out. They're broccoli. Who needs that? So they're not getting enough vitamin D or whatever. And so they get their vitamins and then that helps them, or greens. You don't need greens, but like if you're not eating a great diet, these things can help you in the way that if you're missing out, it's there for you.
I agree. Yep.
Wanted to talk to you about this. There's been so many deaths. There's even a woman, figure competitor. She just died last night. John Meadows, Sean Roden, George Peterson, Cedric. It's crazy. And a lot of people are saying we need to do something about bodybuilding. Seth Rossi said, PDs will kill you. They literally made a video, PDs are killing you. And Cali Muscle spoke I made a long video and he's like, you got to quit bodybuilding. He just like, he's against it. Now, me personally, I don't think we need to cancel bodybuilding.
No.
Also, we had Fuad who had suggested that perhaps we have weight limits for each height. And I remember he said you should be at your height, 215 for classic, but it was actually 192, which would put you at 202. It's not working. Like, so the height weight cap maybe, but the height weight thing, I don't think it's going to do enough. And it would deter too many of the big guys from competing. I suggested that perhaps we add in a drug tested natural division into the Olympia to go alongside of what we already have. So you have open class and you have drug tested, because in powerlifting, I quite literally compete at competitions like world championships. We have the non-tested, the tested. You pick the one you enter. And so do you think that that could be the solution? Because there's so many ideas being thrown out, but what is really going to work? We can't just take out classic physique and just say bodybuilding with weight classes, because, well, it's not fair to so many different people. But if we add in more divisions, not take away, add in, I think that could be the answer. Because, for example, you could say, I'm doing the drug-free division. I'm going in the tested, and then try to win that. If not, you can go into anything goes, do what you want. That gives everyone the choice. What do you think of that idea? Do you think it's possible that that could change bodybuilding? That could be the answer?
At this point, I feel like anything could help at this point. But at the end of the day, bodybuilding is bodybuilding, and people come to see the freaks. People come to see, us stand on stage and be as freaky as we can. Is it dangerous? Yes. Or is there ways to make it safer? Sure. But at the end of the day, like this, we're playing with fire. There's no way around it. I think a lot of the issue lies is just the abuse of PEDs. I think, especially in the off season, you have people abusing food, abusing PEDs, getting to a certain weight and then holding that weight, which is extremely unhealthy. And then what? They come off a little while, and then they got to do prep. And then we all know everyone does probably a little more in prep because of how shredded you got to get. Then there's the diuretic protocols, and then there's this and there's that. I don't think there's any true way to make it better. But I honestly did like Fuad's weight cap suggestion, just because it would help keep everyone in the off season in check, like without gaining too much weight, without doing this, and just saving you all for prep, which is personally what I believe. I think in the off season, yes, right, that's the time to make improvements and time to make the adjustments you need in order to be better for the next show. But it's an off season. You should be still training hard, but I don't think, you need to abuse other things to the extreme. I think you should eat just enough to make your improvements without getting too heavy. We all know we can make improvements without being, 300 pounds. We all do it. We just think we have to get so big. But the reality is it's a dangerous sport where we all know the risk. We're all taking the risk. And the only thing we can really do is individually get our daily blood work check, get our daily EKGs, echoes, calcium scores, however often you feel you need. And that's really it. I mean, it's in my opinion, it all comes down to you.
And before getting back to what you said, I want people to know that you've actually gotten your calcium score done. You had 0. So you've been very proactive with your health, making sure, because a lot of the people I ask people, what questions do you want me to ask? A ton of them about what are you doing to prevent, health and the death in bodybuilding and all that stuff. So I was like, well, he is actually getting tested and he's making sure he's getting the blood work. So he's doing what he needs to do to be as proactive as possible. Not that everything is safe, but he's being as safe as possible. And so getting back to what Fuad had suggested, what is it actually a weight class at the show or an off-season weight cap?
Well, I think it was more of the show. So that way it would make you not get so heavy in the off season so you can make your weight for that class.
Now, I think that Fuad's idea would work if it was in addition to what's already there, because Fuad's idea to have a weight cap limit that's 10 pounds higher than classic, I actually really like that idea, but I like it for classic. So in other words, have a large classic class, So for example, take every class that we have right now, add 10 pounds. So for your height, 192, it would be 1202. Because I compete in classic. I'm an inch shorter than you. My weight cap is 185. I barely make that now, and I'm only on HRT. So any guys that have great genetics, you're not even gonna be able to make that division. Now you add 10 pounds to classic. So Chris Bumstead, his cap at 6'1" is 242. It's now 252. And you add that, and you also add in a smaller one. You take the current cap and lower it by 10. So the guys like Chris Bumstead could, for example, say, hey, 10 more pounds, I'm going to compete in that. The bigger guys that are in open, perhaps not yourself. I don't think you could ever make classic. You're just too big. So, but you're staying where you're at. So we could take a guy like Regan Grimes. He's a top 13 Olympia guy. Maybe he, with 10 more pounds added, switches over to classic. And then he doesn't have to compete in open. And a guy like Chris could say, well, I'm either going to go up 10 pounds or go down 10. So does that not automatically make the sport healthier, given the choice? Because then if you choose to abuse everything and anything, that's on you, but you're given the choice. Right now, there's no choice. It's like you have one division. We have Open Olympia. And I know when I was competing, when I was younger, I would have stayed natural if I would have known I could make it to the Olympia as a natural athlete. I won the overall national title, and I'm natural. And I'm like, okay, where's my pro card? I'm sorry. And I'm like, well, I don't get a pro card. No, you just won that natural show. What's that? That's nothing. And I'm like thinking, I trained natural my whole life to win this, and I get nothing. And so then I take the PDs and I compete and I get my pro card because, well, obviously you're going to get muscle. But if you're given that choice and people knew about it, I think a lot more people would choose to be natural and be healthier, because bodybuilding to the greatest degree is not healthy. But what sport is? The Tour de France, people are crashing, dying, they're taking risks.
I agree.
Football, concussions, NASCAR racing. I mean, you jump out of a plane with a parachute. Is that safe? So we're getting hurt. And so every sport has injury. But if we give people the choice, like, hey, you can compete in this or this. This one's safer. If you're really worried about your health, do this. And to me, if you do that and offer that, then you basically said it's up to you. And I think that would be the fairest, safest way, because anyone that would say die, it'd be like, well, they had that choice, and it's your choice to do or not do whatever you want to do.
No, I agree. Again, I just think something needs to be done or taken care of. But for the time being, I just think it's very important that each one of us individually are just on top of our health. And getting your chest done as frequent as possible. What is it? You get the calcium. What is that, like every 6 months you're supposed to do it or whatever?
Probably every year. I mean, I'm not an expert, so I wouldn't listen. I'm not a doctor, but
I would say that makes sense. But I would say for what we do, I would try and do it every 6 months if possible. And I obviously get his blood work done, every 3 to 4 months at least. And just take us, the health supplements that you need to take, and make sure everything's in line. Like I said, what we're doing it's a risk. It is. There's no really safe way around it, but there's precautions you can take to help keep everything in line.
And I'm from Canada, and I've been trying to get these calcium stores done, the dye tests. I'm in Nova Scotia. I have to literally fly to Ontario to a separate clinic to do these kind of tests. They can't do it where I'm at. You have to pay for it here. Like, we have private healthcare, but you have to pay to get these extra tests done, but they're not available. So it's so hard. So for me to even do it, I have to book a flight, a hotel, travel, spend the whole weekend just to get a test that's done in, like 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. It is. It's hard. It's difficult to find places that are willing to do it. Which again, I think with what we're doing, if there was some type of way where we could get it, allow us to be mandatory, where we can just get it done without an issue, I think that would be good. But there's just a lot of valuable options to take to make the sport safer, and I do think it needs to be a discussion amongst everyone.
Because I think just adding in more divisions, possibly having drug tested divisions, adding them, not saying we're going to just test a Mr. Olympia. They tried that once, and how did that work? I mean, it was just like, we're going to test for diuretics, and it's like, what? It didn't work out at all. And so I think that adding in an extra division and you choose the one, I think that would be huge. I think that would popularize more like the mainstream bodybuilders. A smaller person's clearly going to win the drug tested division. That could work. But also, do you think it's possible to actually have these testing, like the calcium store, EKG, all these things? Could that be a forced thing, like a medical test that needs to be done? Because in other sports, to go in a boxing ring, you have to have medical clearance to do this. They test you. So could it be to go in a bodybuilding show, you have to have medical clearance from a doctor to say you're healthy enough to do this?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful for sure. Because if, again, like if we're not cleared, we have these issues, more people are going to keep dying, and it's just going to make this, it's going to make everything look bad. I think some type of precaution needs to be taken and mandatory to allow the sport to keep going the way it's going.
And speaking of different divisions and stuff, what is your opinion of classic physique overall? Because I know you're an open class bodybuilder, so obviously you're a fan of the biggest, the freakiest guys. But what about classic physique? What do you like that division overall? Like, do you like watching it? Is it something that you would encourage other people? If you had a kid, do you want your kid to do classic or open, or would it matter? Or would you say don't bodybuild? What is your feeling overall?
I love classic. I think it's an excellent division, and I think it's getting more intense year after year. I don't think it'll ever overpower open, but I think it could get really close, especially with the direction that it's going. And as far as if I had a kid, I mean, genetically, he probably wouldn't be classic.
Good point.
But again, like I would never push bodybuilding on my child, but if that was the direction he wanted to take, I would make sure he understands exactly what he's getting into and help him stay as safe as possible.
And bodybuilding, it doesn't get the attention it deserves. It's been a popular sport for decades. Like, is there anything that you think that we could do to make it more mainstream? Like, I mean, to me, golf, they're winning $10 million. They're all millionaires. What is it that we're not doing in bodybuilding? Because how many people don't go to the gym and work out? It's such a popular thing. Millions of people in every country do it, but yet they're not getting the money, the recognition. Is there something that we need to do, perhaps as bodybuilders, that could change that, like that make it more popular and go mainstream?
It's hard to tell. I think we get frowned upon because of what it entails, and that's why it's not a mainstream thing. But honestly, I kind of like it that it's not 100% mainstream, because we're like the outcasts. We're a different breed, and we probably just have as much fans, if not more, than open sports that are mainstream. But I really don't think there's much we can do. I would love to see us back on the TV again. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, when I was growing up and I was competing in the natural federations, they used to show all my shows on TV. I'd be in the bar drinking and be like, "Oh my goodness, I'm on the screen." And so I thought, like, this is like 20 plus years ago. I was on TSN, different shows like around here, like, and then it kind of fell away. And now with the UFC, they have those shows where they show people like the Ultimate Fighter and they just fight each other and they kind of show their lives. I feel like what's missing is that we don't know enough about the life of people. Like, you're doing a show and you're showing some stuff on your YouTube channel, but a lot of people don't do that. I think that if they showed you and another guy and say all the Olympia competitors and showed you training and dieting and all this stuff leading up to the event, and it was some kind of a big show, people would all want to see that, because you would see what do they have to go through, what are the tortures they're doing to their bodies to make sure that they get to this stage level. I think that would be a really good show to watch. And I think with shows and TV, that's where things become more popular.
Oh, I think so. I think even like do like a mini Netflix series. I think something like that would be very creative. Yeah, I mean, I would watch that, honestly.
Yeah, because like look at Pumping Iron. Like, until Pumping Iron came out like ages ago, was bodybuilding really known? This is just one movie, really, and then all of a sudden it became a lot more popular.
Yeah, and that's actually one of my favorite movies.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of people say, competing bodybuilder, it's all about the money, compete for money. Like Cali Muscle, it's all like, I'm watching the show, he's like, yeah, money, couldn't get this money. But the reality is, I think there's maybe 10, 15 bodybuilders that literally make a living from just, like, you're probably one of them, that make a living from actually bodybuilding, like the prize money. For the most part, though, if they took out all the money from the show, so you go to the Olympia, you get third place and your prize money is zero, like literally, would you still do the show? Would you still compete? You still like love it so much that you're doing it for the fun and then you could make money elsewhere? Or is it at this point, it's just a job for me?
I would probably still do it because I love training. That's how this all started. I think you have to have a passion for just training before you want to compete. But I also love competing. So yeah, obviously I would have to have, a full-time job, but I would still compete. I'm very competitive. I love, competitive sports. And if I'm good at something, getting paid or not, I would still thoroughly enjoy doing it.
And so when people say you're competing for that plastic trophy, it's just all for a plastic trophy. When you're an amateur, what would you say to that? Like, obviously it's more than just you're not competing at the USA's to get sixth just for a trophy. Like, what more is it to you?
I think when a lot of people compete, whether they're competing competitively or for themselves, most people have the mindset of doing it for themselves. Like they want to see if they can accomplish it. Because as we know, competing is hard. Dieting is hard. Doing that shit for 20 weeks is hard. So if someone who was, overweight, they just wanted to do the show because they can't stick to a diet without a goal. Doing a show can help them keep that on track. And whether they look like shit or not on stage, they accomplish something. So I think for a lot of people, it's just more of an accomplishment, which I think is awesome. And, people like us, yeah, it's still an accomplishment because, you get used to prep after prep after prep. But to just go through something like that and finish, get awarded for it, it's not about the trophy. It's about how you feel about what you just did and being awarded for it.
Yeah, I definitely think that sense of accomplishment, that challenge, the dopamine that's released when you're on the stage and you get that trophy after that 3 or 4 months of diet, all that work you put in, the feeling that you get, it's addictive. Like I love competing so much. After I did my first show, it was such an exciting feeling being on the stage and doing that whole thing. I couldn't wait to do it again. And I pretty much did every single show after that. Like every time there was a show, I was entering the show every single year. People are probably getting bored of seeing me on the stage because every single year after year, I'm in there. I'm in every single show that I can find because I loved it that much.
Yeah, I played a lot of sports when I was younger. I won a lot of championships, whatever the case, but nothing gave me more of an self-accomplishment than not even so much winning a bodybuilding show, but just finishing it and getting on that stage, presenting your hard work, hearing everyone in the audience clap and go crazy. Like nothing really is better than that.
Yeah. And it's to me not about winning. It's just about doing my best because once I turned pro, I knew that winning was never something that would ever happen again. I mean, I was lucky enough to get fourth in a pro show. That's the best I've ever done. As soon as I won and I knew that next level was up, I said, I'm never going to win, but I would still go in the competition and I'd be like, what's your goal? Top 10. Well, why are you bothering? Because I want to compete and do the best I can and improve and get top 10. 10th is winning. So like, the better you get, the more you need to accomplish to do well. So for example, if I went into the Mr. Olympia and got last place, I would probably be happier than you if you got third place because it's so far out of question that I could even do that it would be like, I can't believe I'm in the Olympia, but for you, you've already been there. And so third, maybe it's not a big deal. And once you've won, getting second, probably not so fun. Like imagine Chris Bumstead getting second next year. I would assume that he would feel like, he would be really disappointed because after you've won it 3 times, you can't lose or it's not fun, I would assume.
Yeah, I agree. That's why even like I'm competitive no matter what. So like even my first Olympian, I got 5th. It's like you should be happy, but I was like, damn.
You're thinking, well, I probably could have been 1 space ahead, but are you thinking like I should have won? Or are you thinking, damn it, I didn't win, or it sucks, I can't win yet? Like, what are you thinking about that exactly?
I didn't expect to win. I have liked to have been compared more to certain people and just have that opportunity because I do think I was ready for that. So that kind of bummed me out. But at the same time, it's like you got 5th at your first Olympia,
Yeah, it's hard to feel bad, but of course you hope for the best and you're trying to do as good as you can. But like, yeah, obviously you're getting 5th. You wanted 4th or 3rd or what have you, and you want the fair chance to compare yourself against everyone. Then you have all the exact photos and everything you need, and you can have the audience say. And honestly, when I finished a show, sometimes I wouldn't win, and I felt like I won, and I would say to my friends, like, "What did you think?" or your significant others, and and as long as you looked your best and you tried, and you could have the judges say one thing and your friends and family saying another, you oftentimes will see this person was robbed. And so the person that doesn't win, they can feel good in the fact that a lot of the audience felt that they won. So it's not all about winning. You know, you can get second and still come out and feel like you won.
I agree. I agree. Again, it's just there's shows that I've lost and everyone thought I should have won. And to me, that's also self-accomplishment. It's like you may have not won, but everyone else sees you as the winner, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt the same way. Sometimes, I mean, I'm thinking I would rather lose and have people think I should have won than won and have everyone say you didn't
more
deserve
hype. It gives a lot more hype behind your name for your next show.
I wanted to get into some questions that I just screenshotted a few that people had asked. Let's see if I can specifically get this. Some specific questions. Jacob Shelby wrote, do recent bodybuilding deaths worry you to any degree? What processes or things do you undergo in order to stay healthy? That's the number one question that people wanted to know.
Yeah, of course it's scary. You know, people are dying in the sport that I do. You know, of course it's scary. And yeah, I take as much health supplements as I can. You know, I take some type of liver product, a kidney product, a cholesterol product, a blood pressure product. I like to take turmeric, my omegas. I have like a line of shit that I take every day, multiple times throughout the day.
And we mentioned earlier the blood work, the getting tested, the calcium score. I mean, you're being proactive. So really, I mean, you're doing everything that you can. I don't know if you knew this, but Larry Wheels just released My Heart After 10 Years of Abuse. He had posted the video yesterday, and he did an echocardiogram, and it came back that he's like really healthy, like nothing was wrong except for an enlarged heart. And he said, that's no big deal because I work out. And I was thinking, I don't know, a large heart can in fact be bad. It can come from PD use. And another thing is that echocardiogram, it doesn't necessarily detect everything. So like, I would hate to think that somebody gets like one test done and they think, oh, I've been abusing PDs for say 5 years. They get one test done and the doctor says it's good, because like my father literally had an echocardiogram and they said you had the heart of a person half your age in his 30s. He had a heart attack a year later, survived after 20 minutes of being out 20 minutes, and they revived him. Lucky, but he went into this, he would have thought my heart is of a 30-something-year-old, no reason to think it. And so just because you get the testing done, it doesn't kind of give you a pass, because like, I'm just scared that some people will get a test done and it'll come back healthy. Like for me, I get my blood work done and my blood work is amazing, but how do I know? I don't have the calcium score. You do. I don't. So how do I know that I've used PEDs for over 10 years? So how do I know that I'm healthy? Like I'm doing all the cardio, I'm eating healthy. So I'm doing everything I can, but there's still that chance. And so, anyone that's thinking about using PEDs or using them, think again, like really think about it. Like, do you really want it? Weigh the pros and the cons, ask your doctor, be proactive. So just want to point that out.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important. And I do think it's important to get every test done. Like you said, just getting an echo done is beneficial, but it doesn't tell the whole story. I think an EKG should be done, getting your calcium score should be done, blood work, echo, all should be done. And even then, like when my calcium score came back 0, that was like a huge sense of relief for me. I was like, thank God. But that doesn't mean, okay, let's, put the gas, to the pedal here and blah. No, we're good. Let's keep doing what we're doing and keep an eye, keep playing the safe game. And some people, that I had comments when I posted that. They were like, oh, looks like he's going to blast his shit. It's like, no, man, like this, I'm just showing I'm somewhat healthy here. I'm good to go. Just going to keep doing what I do.
Yeah, you're just being transparent. And I think making those posts is helpful, because other people will say, well, look, Nick is getting that test done. I might get that test done too. We had Antoine Vaillant get the test done and he was at the 99th percentile. His was through the roof. And so the doctor's warning you, and you got to think, okay, is it really worth it? And honestly, at that point, if you still chose to do it, you've been given the evidence, and if what you choose to do with it is on you. I mean, to me, we all have the right to do whatever we want. Not everyone uses PDs. Some people get drunk every night. Some people do rec drugs every day. It depends. Like we all do certain things. Smoke cigarettes. We have a choice. We live one life on this earth. How you choose to use it, is on you.
I agree. I agree 100%.
Ryan R, he's known for his conditioning. How lean does he stay in the off season?
I like to stay. I don't like to stay overly lean. Obviously, I don't think being, stage lean or even, 3 weeks out lean is healthy. But again, like we talked about earlier, I like to look like a bodybuilder still in the off season, just bigger.
Yeah. And so you mentioned earlier, 10 to 12%. To me, that's really good guest posing shape. I mean, you could certainly walk out and look phenomenal. And how long does it take, just so the average person would know, how long does it take to go from current conditioning now to, let's say they said, I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger said, there's a contest. It's going to be in 3 months from now, and the top 10 each get $10 million. You're probably going to enter. Could you be in shape in 12 weeks at your peak? Like, could you, or would it take 8? Like, how far out are you from I'm ready to compete at the Olympia for $1 million?
I do, like right now, I could probably do a 12-week prep and peak, right? But I prefer longer preps. I actually like to do like a 20-week prep.
Right. So the slower, the better for you. Slowly lose the weight. Don't rush anything, because the greater the calorie deficit, the more you feel like shit. And I've coached a lot of people, and they'd hire me and they show me their photos. I'm like, you're 30% fat. You got 16 weeks. Okay, we're gonna have to, you have to eat 1,500 calories, and they do it, and they do crazy amounts of cardio, but it's like, it's just a nightmare, not worth it. And so, I mean, you could probably get in shape in 8 weeks if you had to do extra cardio, but you just don't want to.
Yeah, I like to do slow and steady, and I'm sure you would agree. The closer you get to a show, you want to be able to pull back. You want to do less cardio. You want to let the body recover and look fresh on stage instead of hammering it going into the show.
And yeah, and for the most part, I find people have to panic at the end. It's rare that I can coach somebody and say, wow, let's add some more food. Ian Valera was probably one of the only ones that, and Joe Alves, these are about the only 2 guys that coach that got pro cards that I was like, holy shit, you look so freaking lean that like it's 6 weeks out for, it's like, wow. Most people, it's like, oh, I'm going to have to tell them, you got to do more cardio, new cardio. And it's, so everyone's kind of like slowly losing the weight. Then it's like a month out and it kind of shit hits the fan. Or like, you actually need to do something. It's a month out. Yeah. You don't ever want to see that. And so you're the opposite. You got like great conditioning going in. It's going to be a breeze, and then you can kind of de-stress, lower cortisol, and so on.
Exactly. I like to be ready a good 2 to 3 weeks out.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, for myself, I try to think whatever I think is ready, I need 2 to 3 more weeks of dieting, because I find that when I'm dieting, there's always more fat you can lose. Like if you're chasing 4% versus 5, like there's from 6 to 5, 5 to 4, 4 to under, like the difference in conditioning is mind blowing. And so a lot of people, I find they compete, I'll call it soft. I mean, they look good, but like, I'm thinking, wow, if they had 3 more weeks to diet, they would really nail it. So most people I find are a little bit off, and you're known for your conditioning. For me, I was the same way. I was always one of the most conditioned guys. So I really think that comes from being fairly lean in the off season. You're 10 to 12% now. That to me is really lean. I would have been the same way. That way, when you diet down, you're going to retain more muscle. It's easier. You don't have to go crazy on the cardio. You can eat a bit more food. I never cut really below 2,500 to 3,000 in my own preps. And I'm not a big guy, relatively speaking, but I could eat that much because I didn't have that much to lose.
I just think it's a healthier way to prep too. Like it just makes things go very smooth, no bumps in the road, and it's just easier.
Absolutely. Yulian Ivanov, I would like to know if he would do whatever it takes to win the Olympia title, even if that means shortening his lifespan by a decade or more. Would it be worth it to him? I think that's a great question, because they used to ask people, if you could swallow this pill and it shortened your life by 10 years, but you'd win an Olympic gold medal, would you do it? And I think it was like 95% said yes. So I guess that's the same question to you. If you could swallow the magic pill that guarantees you could win the Olympia, would you take it to erase 10 years off your life?
So if you asked me this question when I was 18, 19, 20, I would say, fuck yeah. Now, probably not. As much as obviously my goal is now to win Olympia, but getting older, I say like I'm old, I'm only 27, but you get more mature, you get wiser, and you realize just how precious life really is. And you want to explore and actually have a life. And so, you know, if you ask me this now or even when I was 30, I'm going to say no.
Yeah. And I like that you say, like, you know, I'm acting like I'm old, but you're older and wiser than you were at 18. And I remember being 18, I would have swallowed that pill all day long. You know, I would have won. I would have taken time. I would have probably taken multiple of them, like 20, 30. I live to be 50 and I win all the medals. I'm doing it. Then I got into my 20s. I was like, you know, 30s, now 40s. And it's only been with all the recent deaths in bodybuilding that have gotten me to say, no, I'm not going to do any cycles anymore. The last cycle I did was just over 3 years ago for my last show. And it was maybe a quarter as big as when I was like, you know, open, because when you're a bodybuilder and you have no weight cap, I had to get as big as possible. Now I competed in the 212, but I wasn't near that weight limit. So I was trying to get as big as possible. Yeah. Once I did classic, I could only weigh 185. I'm like, well, I can't take hardly anything because I won't make the weight. And so, I mean, I almost passed out weighing in, trying to make 185. I lost whatever, 10, 12 pounds in a day to cut weight, tons of diuretics, the whole thing to make that weight class. And so, I mean, I was 195 this morning and I'm on HRT 100 milligrams every 5 days. So 140 a week, and that's it. And so I would like to compete again, but I'm not going to do cycles. And so how am I going to win? Or do well at all? I can't really. So if there is in fact a natural event body, like if I could actually compete that way, perhaps they allow HRT, I don't know, but I would certainly want to do that. And so as you get older, you just see the reason, like as you get older, you question, well, why did I take those things? Like some of those doses of trend that I took in the past and some of the cycles, I'm like, it was so stupid. Like certainly regret it. Looking back, I can't say that if I rewound time, I would never have done a cycle. I can't say that because I don't know, but yeah. I certainly had some crazy doses that I would have regretted doing now that I'm 46, that at 36, I would have been like, I'm full in, I'm doing everything.
Yeah. And it's like the older you get, what if you want to, you don't want children, right? And then
personally, I don't, but like, even if I did,
for example, yeah, it's like now your life shortened and now, you know, God knows when, but now this kid's got to grow up without a father. You know, there's certain things you begin to really look at that you wouldn't look at as if you were like, you know, 18, 19 years old. You know, I don't know if I'm going to have kids. I don't really know if I want kids yet, but if it just happens, it's like my life's changed now. You know, I have to now think of what's going to benefit, you know, my child in the long run.
Yeah, I've always been able to live selfishly. All I have is pets. I really could take anything and do anything. And it's like, what am I doing? It's all to myself. It's not anyone else. But if you have kids, that really comes into question. Am I doing the right thing? And anyone that hasn't watched Seth Feroci's video, like Sarah's going to kill you, basically. He says, like, I went to the doctor and they said, you know, you keep doing this, you got 10, 15 years. That's it. And so it's like, do you want that? And he's like, he's got kids. So he stopped. He's on HRT. He said he went from 245-ish or so to 208, maybe something like that. But he's ripped. He's got a ton of muscle. He's only like our height. And he does cardio and he's a machine. And he's like, I'm happier than I ever was. So you think at the time that all that muscle was needed. But then when you lose it, you don't feel any different. Like, I went from being 230 plus, now I'm like 195. So I've lost a lot of muscle, but I'm leaner, but I have better cardio. I'm more fit. I'm certainly as happy as ever was. So you look at me and I don't have the big muscles I had, but I still feel good. And so I'm like, so what's the point? Like, I'm not competing. I'm never going to be in the Olympia. So it doesn't make sense for me to do that.
No, it's true. Like, you know, I know being 290 and I say like, this is the best I've ever felt at this weight, but I know if I was 240, I would probably be a lot happier and feel more lively than I do now.
Yeah. And so bodybuilding, it has that addictive nature because we're always trying to improve. You get dopamine every time you get stronger, bigger, the dopamine. So we have somebody like Antoine Vaillant, who's been over 300 pounds and had that really poor result. And he's trying to, you know, fix up his health. And I don't think he wants to downsize that much. He's been a bodybuilder. That's been his thing for his whole life. And to just say, oh, I'm going to go natural and go from say 300 pounds to 220, it's a lot to take in. And so for bodybuilders, one of the hardest things, and I mean, you're still young, one of the hardest things is when bodybuilding is done, perhaps you want to compete 5 years, 10 years, but eventually you stop. And then you have to transition from being, like we talk with Ronnie Coleman in the elevator, and I'm sure you are, you have to go from being that holy wow, that the guy that everyone's going to look at in the gym, to just being a guy. Maybe not, you'll probably still have enough muscle, even natural, that you'd still be a freak. But for most people, like, we stop bodybuilding, you lose all that muscle, and it is hard to accept.
It is, I know that's going to happen to me. And I know with my mindset, that's going to be a really hard time for me to accept. But I also know it's going to be needed. Like it's going to happen, and it has to happen, especially when I'm done, competing. There's no way, like, and I personally don't even want to be, this big for the rest of my life. It's not needed.
Yeah. And another thing is, when you're in contest shape versus the off season, you're off season, you still look amazing, but a lot of people don't. And it's not just men, women, bikini competitors, and so on. I see some people, and they diet down, they do their bikini show or their bodybuilding show, the full 6-pack, and they're showing their photos on Instagram every day. Then it's the off season, they put on 30, 40 pounds, and all of a sudden they don't like what they look like anymore. And it's throwback. I look this way, throwback. And so mentally, they feel fat now, and then eating disorders start. Now, a lot of bodybuilders, and how popular would you say, like, eating disorders are, like the mental anguish or body dysmorphia, like all these kind of things? How prevalent is that in the IFBB pro circuit, or is it mostly the amateurs? Like, do you have any experience with this?
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like, especially when I'm in contest shape, I feel extremely small. Everyone's like, no, you're not small. But I think everyone experiences that once they get to a certain level, a certain, bigness, that once that kind of goes away, you will get body dysmorphia for sure.
Wow. And I remember Cedric McMillan, he was in that interview, and he was saying, yeah, I got picked up at the airport before guest posing. He was saying how small he was, that the guy picking up was small, and he just finished guest posing, and it was like, small, like what? Now, personally, I don't know if it's cocky, I never smelled small. Even when I dieted down and I was at my smallest, I had no body dysmorphia. Perhaps I felt bigger than I actually was. But what I did experience was I felt fat. So when I go from competing and I'm 4 to 5% body fat, and I go in my off season, especially in my younger years, and I would gain body fat and say I'm up to 15, which is still pretty lean. After being 6 and going to 15 felt fat. I started at 15, and I at 14, 13, 12, every week you're getting leaner and leaner, and you feel like, wow, I look great. And you see a pump in the new vein that you got, and it's like, wow. And then the reverse happens, and you go from 6 and you're going back to 15.
All that goes away.
It's blurring. The lines are blurring. And then you're at 10, and I'm like, oh, I feel kind of fat. And then the comments, people start commenting, and this is before social media. I didn't have anyone follow me when I was younger. I didn't even know how to use the internet when I was younger. You'd have comments, people come on, oh, what happened to you? You were like ripped a month ago. Now you're fat. And I'm like, I'm fat. And I was like, and then you start looking and you start believing and you listen to other people. Yeah. And then now it's social media. I mean, I can do the best video in the world. There can be 1,000 great comments. There's going to be 50. They're going to be like, you suck, you manlet, fat piece of shit, loser. Like, so you're going to read so much shit. And so it can get to your head, but I've gotten to the point where I'm like, listen to the good, the bad, you can address it, but don't let it affect you. But has that affected you? And do you see that today?
It used to affect me, not so much now, because I feel like once you go through the process so much, you just know what to expect. And I've gotten so much criticism and negative comments through my entire career that nothing really phases me anymore. But I because of that, I always have people like reach out and say, like, how do I handle it? And it's like, listen, I didn't handle it, when I first started to receive it, but you learn to just, it's part of the game. You get lean, you get a little fat, you get lean, you get a little fat. It's part of the process. And people that make comments, especially on social media, that's who are they? They have no relevance in your life. They don't know who you are. So you just, in my opinion, just got to ignore it.
You're such a much younger generation, about 20 years younger than me. So you kind of grew up with this. And like when I grew up, I didn't have all these negative comments. You had your 20 friends that you knew, and you didn't see anyone else. Like, I thought I was jacked. I was 128 pounds in high school, and I was the strong guy in the school. Like, I was the strongest, that had the most muscle. So you think you're great. I entered my first bodybuilding contest, and I'm thinking, I'm going to just dominate because, like, I don't know anyone that has my muscle. And then I'm 140 something pounds and I'm in the heavyweight. I win lightweight. And then the heavyweight junior's there. He's 208 pounds. He got second at nationals bodybuilding. I'm like he's basically looks like you when you were, 19 years old. I'm like, who is this guy? And I'm just a small thing. And so you're not aware of everything that's going on in the world. You don't have that awareness. But nowadays, all I have to do is go on Instagram and I'm going to see 25 guys in 5 minutes that look way better than me. And so, and the same is going to apply to girls and young people. And so the pressure to look good now is so much worse than when I was young. Like when I was growing up, guys, it was no big deal. Guys, you could look like anything you want. Girls, they all have to be skinny. Nowadays, girls have to have a waist this big, boobs this big, surgery, ass all over the place. And it's Brazilian buttlets. It's impossible. The guys look like you. And so the kids are looking and it's like, what is happening? So the pressure in social media, unreal. Did you grow up with this pressure? Did you feel that?
Yeah. And I think even now I still feel it because of social media, and to be as popular as, these certain people are, including myself, I feel you have to look a certain way. You have to be presentable. Back in the day, I wouldn't say, I won't characterize everyone, but like you said, back in the day when you were in the off season, people got fat, like no one cared. They all we saw was what they looked like on stage. We didn't see them really in the off season. Now, because of social media, off season or not, you have to look presentable, which I also think can play a role in the unhealthiness of this all. We all have to look a certain way to be presentable, to represent, this brand a certain way, to do this a certain way. And then they, a lot of them, I wouldn't say competitors, maybe like, the IG influencers, shit like that. They probably stay and do certain things that are unhealthy to maintain a certain look, because that's what they think they have to do when it's going to backfire.
Absolutely. I feel like the pressure's gone like a completely different way. Cause like at 18 years old, I'm a natural kid, just lifting weights. I have a lot of muscle. I felt amazing. But if I were 18 years old, if I went rewound in time and I was 18 and I was that now, I would have scrolled through. I'd have been just like I would have been a nobody. I would have been compared to all these guys, all these Gymshark models. I was nothing. But when I was in my own time, I felt like I'm the shit. I'm winning everything. I'm dominating. Why would I take any PDs? I'm winning everything. But now it's so easy to compare by swiping. You can see everybody. And so that pressure is tremendous. So my advice to people is like, stop comparing yourself to other people, because even at our level, like I have over 1 million followers, and you compare how are other people, you can feel like shit. You can be like, oh, I only got 100,000 views in this video. I must have done really shitty. But meanwhile, it's only because you're comparing yourself to the people who are just that much better.
Yeah. I think that's another big downfall is everyone tries to compare each other to everyone. It's like, stay focused on you, stay in your own lane, and everything will happen over time.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to do. It's a lot easier to say than to do, but
Of course.
It's really good advice. And another thing I've always said to people was, I stopped giving a shit about what other people think. Just like, I'm going to make a video and people are going to make fun of my voice or how I talk or my height, but just do it anyway and stop worrying about what they think and only care about what you think. And once you can do that, life is so much better.
It is like you realize like you can't please everyone. So you're going to have people that love you, and then you're going to have people that hate you. You just got to do it anyway. Like, you're never going to please everyone. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Like some people are going to say you have a blocky waist, and it's like, what? Like you just don't see it. But if you hear that message versus the guy that says, oh, I think you have a really small waist, and you just listen to them, then they're going to keep shitting on you. And there's no matter what you do, you could win a show and somebody's going to say, oh, you didn't deserve it. Your back wasn't big enough. Or, oh, your arms are too big for your calves. And there's so many negatives that are going to happen. Or you're 15% body fat. What happened? You're so fat. And it's like, he still has abs in the off season. How is that fat? You know what I mean? Like, but it's gone so far that people, I don't think they understand how to be normal humans anymore.
No. And again, I can even say for myself, I feel like even to a degree, I have to look a certain way. Like, yeah, I'm in my off season, but I still have to maintain a certain look to be, presentable, to be, who I am, so to speak, to be presentable for Hostile, presentable for all my supplement brand. When in the reality, like I said, back in the olden days, that didn't matter. I'm not saying if social media wasn't around, I'd be a complete, fatty here, but I would probably enjoy more food more frequent than I do now. I'll say that.
Yeah, having that certain look. And I know that like I do all my videos with like a tank top. And I know when I was prepping for competitions and I was on a lot of PDs, I had a bigger chest, the striations were prevalent. And when I'm screaming and shouting and telling you how to diet, well, you see a shredded guy telling you versus a fatter guy, a normal built guy, it doesn't have the same effect. And so I personally don't think I would have the same YouTube channel now as if I had been natural the whole time, because if I was natural, I wouldn't have had the same amount of muscle. I wouldn't have had the same ability to influence people. And so it's sad because a lot of the younger people are going to see this and think, well, I have to have single digit body fat. I have to have this much muscle or else people aren't going to listen to me. It's a sad reality.
It is. Yeah. Like I always said, if I could just erase social media, I would. As much as I love it, it really can it can put people in like a weird place mentally, And I've seen it happen. And it's like, and especially for me, like I said, as much as I love, filming YouTube, I love putting out the way I look on social media. I love filming my exercises. I love it. I do. But sometimes like you don't want to put your whole life out there and you want some privacy. And then, you try to be a little private and then people are like, oh, you owe us this explanation. Why are you doing this? Yada, yada. And it's like, I'm still human. Like I have feelings. I get emotional and sometimes I just need a break.
Absolutely. And I mean, for me, I'm pretty much an open book and I handle criticism quite well. I mean, I can sometimes attack back, but to me, that's for drama and views. Like somebody pisses me off and I make a video about them. It's good. It's good for the channel. Now, my girlfriend, on the other hand, she does not handle it well. So if something's bad's happening or negative, or people start making fun of me and she sees it, she can't handle it. I can handle it. She can't. So I'll have to, behind the scenes at home, talk to her and like, it's okay. They said this about me, but it doesn't matter. And it pisses her off 10 times more than me. And so people don't see that. They don't know what's happening behind the scenes of like, how's it affecting your girlfriend? What does your parents think about all this? Your family, your brother or sister? Like there's a lot of things that people just don't realize. It's just like your person, but they don't know that there's more than just you involved. There's other people. And so sometimes people attack me or make videos about me and they're so used to me responding. And so if I don't respond, they think that I somehow lost or that they're right. And I'm like, no, I just have other reasons not to, and it's not worth it to me. And there's other, well, let's call it a positive video that I can do that doesn't have to be negative. And I can't attack everyone.
No, it's true. Like I'll even use my mother as an example. She knows more about people talking about me than I do because she'll send me everything. she knows everything before I do. And I just have to tell her, I'm like, Mom, look, like, I love you, but I don't care. Like, it's never going to end. Like, so just stop looking for it. Stop searching for it. And it's fine. Like, people are always going to talk. Like, you just got to let it go. And she's very, like, not the person to let things go. I have learned to do that. She's still, especially when it comes to her children, right? So like, you're going to be protective over your children no matter what. And that's just the type of mother she is. And I love her for it. But like, there's some days I'm like, Mom, I don't care. Like, just let it go, please.
Yeah, there's so much stuff. And I have people that I've hired to like actually find and research other videos for me to do topics and stuff. And they started sending me every single time somebody mentioned me and I'm watching, I'm like, I don't have enough headspace to hear all these negative videos and stuff. So I had to stop going for all the negative. I had to say, like, I don't want you to send me any video from these 10 people that are going to do videos about me because it's all negative. I just don't want to hear it. And so if I don't hear it, it technically didn't even happen in my mind. Cause like,
right.
It's funny how I look at it. Like, you have millions of people around the world that I've never met and they're writing comments and I don't know who they are. And it's like, how am I letting these magical comments that appear from people I've never met and will never meet affect how I feel on the inside? Like, what is the point?
Exactly. No, I agree. I agree 100%, man.
All right. That's about all the questions I had to ask. Is there anything that you wanted to ask or is there anything you wanted to mention?
No, I think this was a very good podcast. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about a variety. I think we talked about a ton of different topics, and we'll split it up into different videos. And I think that
Yeah.
people love it.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be a good one for sure.